Paul Begala, Republican strategist, Alice Stewart. Paul, we have to at least put up I always described it as a Surgeon General's warning when Trump would talk. When I was at the White House, I would describe it that way, because you basically need that every time he talks. But this is not Trump's only event. He's going to the border later this week. He's going to have these rallies later on this summer. Putting to the side what Trump is saying at these events, the sheer size of them, he is bringing people out to these rallies. Do Democrats have to worry about that?
You should always worry, yes. I think Republicans should worry too, though, because at this stage of an election cycle, the most important thing is recruiting. It's like Texas Longhorn football, right? Who are we getting to come to our team? Donald Trump is spending time recruiting Republicans to run against Republicans instead of recruiting Republicans to run against Democrats. In that district, which is trending Republican, but it's a swing district, he attacked the incumbent Republican congressman, Anthony Gonzalez, who is one of the few Latino Republicans in the House. He's a former NFL player. He's a pretty tough candidate to beat. So he's weakening this Republican. He's dividing his party, pulling it to the extremes, and weakening it. So I say, great. Good job, Donald.
What do you think, Alice? Well, is this bad for the GOP?
It's not great because, as Paul said, what he's doing, this is a grievance tour. He is going across the country and he is finding incumbents, or candidates or challengers for Republican incumbents for the people that voted for Donald Trump to be impeached. There are 10 of them. He's committed to doing this. My view on this is I wish he was as committed to Infrastructure Week as he is to his revenge endorsements. We would have gotten a lot done. But here's the thing that's important to keep in mind. While the rhetoric I have never liked, the tone I have never liked, the lies about the election I have never liked, we have to keep those people on board. We need to keep Trump's base engaged and energized and out to the polls. And what we also need to be doing simultaneously is trying to bring back the disaffected Republicans that he pissed off and went another way in the 2020 election. So keeping these people engaged and energized is really important, but I question how effective this is going to be in the midterm with regard to going after shooting within the Republican tent. I think it's not productive, but
he's not bringing the party together, that's for certain.
Exactly.
And Paul, Trump was not the only speaker last night. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene was there. It was sort of the Trump All-Stars last night. She used her remarks to launch an attack on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let's listen.
The Democrats are now controlled by the Jihad Squad, led by AOC, the little communist from New York City. That's right. Yeah, lock her up too. That's a good idea. She's not an American. She really doesn't embrace our American ways.
That is not American to say something like that. But Ocasio-Cortez responded to the little communist remark by tweeting. We put this up on screen. First of all, I'm taller. I mean, that is not a bad way to respond, Paul.
Yeah, it's better to just laugh it off. The problem is there could be security implications.
Absolutely.
Now, I bet Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene probably needs security, too. I want to protect her. I want her to be safe as well. But when she says those very hateful, bigoted things about an American member of Congress, there are security implications, and she should know that now. It's not most, it's not many, but some tiny, tiny fraction of her audience could be deranged and could be inspired to violence. We saw the violence on January 6th, so she knows or should know that she has the capacity to inspire some tiny percentage of her followers to violence. And so she should be much more responsible. She should be ashamed of herself.
Well, and the problem with that, there are plenty of policy arguments to make against AOC and the squad. There are plenty of them. We could go on all day about the policy differences that Marjorie Taylor Greene has with AOC. That's what she should be doing, and not calling her names and not threatening her. But she knows darn good and well when she makes comments like that, she accomplishes two things. Donald Trump loves it, and her base starts donating money. She's raising money off that type of rhetoric. But the key here is not to go after the other side or even Republicans on name calling, but let's stick to policy, get away from the personality crap, and let's stick to policy.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I tried to talk to Marjorie Taylor Greene late last week. I'm sure you saw some of the video of this. And there's a Wizard of Oz quality to it, just like with Donald Trump. When you peel back the curtain, there's not a whole lot there. I tried to ask her repeatedly about this FBI conspiracy theory about January 6th, and she can't explain it. And so she has her talking point. She can deliver a good line on a stage at a rally, But my suspicion is that if you were to go to her and say, oh, how do you back this up? You know, locking up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, we don't do that in this country. But Alice, let me ask you about this. Tucker Carlson and Fox News, they've been on this, rampage about critical race theory. He tried to spin this as anti-white mania. Let's listen and let's talk about it just a little bit.
The question is, and this is the question that we should be meditating on day in and day out, is how do we get out of this vortex, this cycle, before it's too late? How do we save this country before we become Rwanda?
What do you think about that, Al? I mean, this is just the latest outrage device over at Fox, is it not?
It's certainly gotten a lot of traction. I personally don't agree with critical race theory. I think it calls attention to racism as a construct that permeates all areas of America. I totally disagree with that. But at the same time, I think some in the Republican Party and the right-wing media are spending too much time and attention on this and saying disparaging things about military leaders who are using
General Milley.
General Milley, and the comments made against him, I think, were completely inappropriate. But again, this might be something that is important to a small facet of right-wing media. But there are many more things we need to be focusing on. Let's spend more time talking about infrastructure. Let's spend more time talking about the border and taxes and how we're going to pay for this infrastructure package. I think this is certainly something that is only pertinent and relevant with a small minority of the far right.
Quick final thought, Paul. You seem to know Tucker Carlson as a program
together for many years.
Yeah.
I think that Alice makes a good point. This is diversion by distraction, right? The Democrats are busy putting shots in arms and dollars in the bank. They look like they're reaching a bipartisan deal on infrastructure, so they're governing the country. This is a superpower, and I'm sure the Democrats will make their mistakes, but they're actually executing on the things that people care about. The right keeps coming up with these stupid straw men, these piñatas that they can just whack that have nothing to do with the real lives of real people. Just by the way, critical race theory is enormously useful. It's a graduate level construct. It's not taught in K through 12, but it's enormously useful. And the notion that some of my friends on the right are so afraid of a collection of ideas. It's not the only theory that explains America, but it's one of lots that we should study. That's all General Milley was saying. By the way, General Milley served in every hotspot in the last 30 years, from Somalia to Iraq to Afghanistan to Bosnia. He also has degrees from Princeton, Columbia, and the Naval War College. He's a very impressive man, by the way, put in that job by Donald Trump, and yet he's being attacked by the right. I think it's really sad.
It's disgusting, and I mean, we salute General Milley's service over here, and I mean, I just don't understand. You're not supposed to teach critical race theory in schools, but it's okay to teach your kids to call a general pig. I don't get it. All right, Paul Begala, Alice Stewart, thanks so much. Coming up, 20 million people dealing with unimaginable heat, including triple-digit temperatures as high as 115 degrees. The live report is next.